Welcome back to the Awake and Aware podcast. Today we bring it back for number 11, episode 11. We 2 episodes in from the double digits, but it has been an absolute incredible journey. I wake up every day with a fire in my belly to continue to show up for the community and show up in the mental health space and to really do my best to bring the conversation forward about mental health and how we can curb the statistics around men suicide. It's a number what is ever so growing, and it is something what is so close to my heart that sometimes I can't even sleep at night because I think about all the men around the world who unfortunately think like their days aren't worth living. So here we are today in the space talking about all things mental health, adversity, all on the Awake and Aware podcast. Now today's guest is a fellow member of the men's health space. He's been someone who I've met quite recently during my journey throughout this wild space, which has been all things exciting. Ben, he is well known in the space, and he's someone who has a lot of adversity behind him, and who has a lot of wisdom and gold nuggets that I think you guys will take away within your own life today and use it to benefit you along your journey to a better state of mind. Ben, thank you so much for joining me today in the space, brother.
Bro, what an introduction.
Thanks, mate.
There's like some time that went into that, right?
That was top of the dome, bro.
Bro, thank you so much, man. It's so good to be here. Honestly stoked to be able to come on here and just, I guess, like you said, share a bit of my story and hopefully give some people some takeaways that can help them to make some changes in their life, you know? Because like you said, like mental health, especially for us as men, is something that we struggle so much to talk about. But what you're doing is amazing, bro. Like actually having these conversations is really opening the door for so many other men.
Thank you, brother.
It's like giving other men hope that there is you know, there is hope for whatever they're going through.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, you know, the way you and I met was quite spontaneous, right? When I was doing my content throughout Burleigh, literally walked into you, and you know, now we're here. What a fucking ride it is, hey?
Right? Only a few weeks. This is life, man. It's like I don't believe in such thing as coincidences, bro. Like everyone that we meet is in our life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. I heard that one off the late Kerwin Ray, and yeah, man, like it really just rings true. Like people we meet that we thought we were going to know for our entire lifetimes, we have no idea about what they're doing these days, you know? Or the people that we literally meet for a split second become lifelong friends because of the connection and obviously the same journey that you're on, the energy that you have, man. I definitely feel like that with you, bro, because we're definitely working in the same space, man, and there's obviously a higher purpose behind it all.
Absolutely. And I think everyone who is in the mental health space, there's always a story behind why we're in the mental health space, you know? The conversations I've had, and I'm sure you have had, and even the past that you and I have experienced, wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. So I think going back to your origin story, who is Ben Lowe? Who is he now? Why did he incorporate into change into this life?
Well, I'm Ben Lowe. I'm 32 years old. I'm a father to my beautiful son, William. I've got a very successful men's coaching business, helping men to overcome self-sabotaging behaviours like drugs, alcohol, womanising, gambling, all that sort of stuff. And I've also just started to found a non-for-profit to work with youth crime and help to prevent that, especially here on the Gold Coast. But had you have met me 7 years ago, there is no way you would have thought I'd end up here. You know, there was no way. So I was an ice addict. I spent a lot of time in jail. I was a womanizer, a gambler, a terrible father, all those things. But that's all part of the story. So let's wind it back.
Yeah? Give me the origin, like from childhood. Let's go, brother.
Yeah, man. So I guess I'll start at 13 years old because that's the most notable thing that I can remember from childhood. You know how you have those sort of vivid memories that really just stand out, right? There's 2 for me, and these 2 were something that I really made peace with on a recent ayahuasca journey I went on. And the first one was 8 years old, being locked in my room with my parents for the entire day. Right, and for me, I remember screaming and no one came, right? That was one real big thing that stood out for me. And then that was the first time I really experienced abandonment, right? The second, I guess, most vivid experience from childhood was 13 years old. And that was when my parents split up. Because from the outside looking in, up until this point in time, my life would have looked perfect. I went to good schools, had a good home, had a lovely little sister. My family, like, I guess from the outside looking in, was perfect, right? But I always was quite a timid kid, really lacked confidence, and I really struggled to fit in. Like I really just didn't know who my people were. And so after my parents split up, things got really chaotic at home. And to deal with it, like at the time I was skateboarding, I was hanging out with a lot of kids from the skate park and that sort of stuff. To deal with it, I started drinking. You know, so 13 years old, I remember hanging out with one of my mates. We used to go over there and have sleepovers at his house on the weekends, and we'd steal his mum's Johnny Walker Red Label premix cans and go down to the skate park and get pissed. And all of a sudden I was like, this feels good. This feels really good, you know. And so then that's 13 years old. And to learn that alcohol is something that makes me feel good at 13 years old really just set the trajectory for what the rest of my life looked like from there on out. Fast forward to 15 years old and, well, actually about 16, sorry. And me and my parents were fighting every day, like every day, you know, just like they didn't get me, they didn't understand it, was all their fault. There was that victim mindset. And, yeah, I got this, I guess, ultimatum given to me by my mum, right? So she's like, you either pull your head in and follow our rules, because I was, you know, drinking, like I said, partying. I'd just like, they'd be like, you're grounded. I'm like, whatever, see you later, I'm going. Just come home whenever I felt like it. And I started smoking weed, which they didn't know about at the time. And obviously with using marijuana and drinking, my moods were all over the shop, dude. Like I was up and down like a yo-yo, quite literally. And I was really, really aggressive, really, really angry, and I was taking that out of my parents. And as you probably know, like we take our, you know, darkness out on the people closest to us usually, because it's like, well, they're not going to leave me, you know. And Mum gave me the ultimatum, and she's like, you either follow my rules and pull your head in, or you move out. And had anyone asked at the time, I would have told you I got kicked out of home, because it was like this story, like, poor me, victim mindset, right? And so here I was, 16 years old, out in the big bad world all by myself. And I remember for the first 6 months that I was out there, I'm pretty sure I lived on mee goreng and Macca's, because I was working at McDonald's at the time, right? So I literally, like, as you can imagine, like me now, the knowledge that I have around food and that sort of stuff, that makes me feel sick just thinking about that, right? But it was pretty volatile for me at the time, because I moved out of home. I was living in one of my managers from McDonald's, which was my first and only real job. Living in one of his share houses. He had a couple of houses, and I was renting one of his rooms for like $100 a week. Imagine these days getting a room for $100 a week. What that'd actually get you?
Fuck.
And this is like this is in a house with a pool. It was like quite close to like Garden City in Brisbane, like Mount Gravatt. So it was like accessible to everything. You'd be paying like $300 or $400 just for that room alone now.
Absolutely.
Right? Anyways, and so yeah, I was working the night shift at McDonald's. I was still going to school trying to get my Year 12 certificate, because my mum was a school teacher, and she drilled into me that Year 12 is the most important thing. You have to get your Year 12 certificate, right? And so here I am trying to make sure that I still got my Year 12 certificate. And I just started selling pot as well to keep myself afloat. And after a few months of this, I got really, really sick with glandular fever. And I guess you could say this is where my entrepreneurial mindset came from. I was like, well, going to school, it's doing fuck all for me. It's not making me money. I was very money focused, right? Going to work, I'm actually losing money being at work. So I just went all in on my hustle, selling pot. And so from 16 years old, I pretty much quit my job. And I had a couple of jobs in between then and now, like little shitty jobs here and there. But pretty much from 16 years old, I became a drug dealer. So fast forward to about 18 years old, and just before my 18th birthday, I moved back in with my dad into his house, and things really kicked off my drug business. Just for whatever reason, maybe the area that he was living in, I had a lot of friends around there that obviously scored a lot of weed. And so, yeah, I was fighting with my dad a lot, because I'd been smoking pot for the last few years, and I treated him like he was stupid. I remember just literally sitting in my bedroom playing, like, I think it was Modern Warfare 2 back then, playing Modern Warfare 2 on Xbox. And my little brother at the time, I'm pretty sure he was like 9, like 10 or 11. He'd come in and I'd give him a cone. You know what I mean? Like, come pump on this, you know? And he'd be like, oh my God, I'm so fucked. And he'd sit there, we'd play Xbox together. I'm like 18. He's like, he would have literally been 10 or, how old is he now? He would have been like 10 or 11.
And he's fucking hanging off a bug.
I'm hanging off the end of the fucking Gatorade saxophone, you know what I mean?
Shit.
And, man, my dad used to come home and he'd open my door, and obviously all the smoke would just come out under the door. He's like, what the fuck are you doing, going off? And I just treat him like he was stupid. I'm like, what are you talking about? You got no idea. You know, just ego, naivety, all that sort of stuff got the best of me. I mean, I was selling drugs from his house. And obviously all that sort of led up to this one point. And some dumb drunk shit one night led to the front door of my family home being kicked in by 8 police officers. So we had my Indonesian stepmom, who's like loveliest lady you ever met, 4 foot nothing, only one home. There's 8 cops at the front door. There's storming the house looking for me.
What's sparked that?
So we were out, and this is something that I used to do when I was drinking, was I'd go out and break into cars.
Been there, bro.
Yeah. And why do we do that? Like, what is it for? Like, is it validation? Yeah, sure. Like, is it to be cool? Yeah, sure. It's like to have that little bit of an edge, to be a bad boy, you know what I mean? And so every time I got drunk, I'd just go to a party, have a backpack with me, and I'd leave. And just like halfway through the night, I'd just leave, and everyone would be like, where's Ben gone? I'd just be out breaking houses. I'd be out hitting cars. I'd be out... Anything that wasn't bolted down was coming with me. You know, I'd be stealing cars, all that sort of stuff. And so 18 years old. No, it would have been just before my 18th birthday. So around 18 years old, I got hit with my first charges. And it was, for breaking into 54 cars and houses. Right, so the police...
It's a high number, bro.
Rocked up to my house and they're like, we've got 54 counts of breaking and enter that we want to serve your son for. And so they found all the pot. They weren't even there for the drugs. And they found fucking stolen TVs in my bedroom that I had, like, you know, like your sliding cupboard doors? But I had like a TV in there. I had a TV in my room. Like, what do I need another TV for? Just from like the dumb shit I was doing, man. And so I guess you could definitely say that was the nail in the coffin for mine and my dad's relationship. And so after a few weeks, I was bouncing between mates' houses. I was living on couches and stuff like that. I remember I had a massive blow up with my dad after he told me the police had come there. He took me to the police station and I had to fess up for everything. And I just had this massive blow up. And all of a sudden I was back out on the street all over again, you know?
Do you think that once you were going through all that and once your father made you go to the police station and you fess up, did you have a sense of shame or a sense of guilt?
Nah, man. So... this is one thing I know now for certain about drugs and alcohol, is that drugs and alcohol put you in a disassociated state. So I felt nothing. No remorse, no nothing. I was like, why? Why me? Why are you like making me the bad guy here? There was actually there was literally no remorse at all because I was still stoned or I was drinking. And that was like almost every day. Like there wasn't a day that I wasn't stoned. I'd wake up, I'd punch a cone. I'd brush my teeth, then punch another cone, you know, and I'd literally sit in my bedroom, play Xbox, or I'd be out with the boys punching cones somewhere else behind behind their high school or behind,
someone's fucking shed it, 3 p.m. on a Friday.
Yeah, well, mum and dad are out of the house, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just numbed myself. But if we take that back a second, it's like 13 years old, started drinking to numb myself, found weed, right? Weed became another thing that I could use to numb myself, right? But I could function a lot better when I was smoking cones than I could when I was drinking Pierce. And so it just became a daily thing, you know? And yeah, this timeline like is so sort of warped for me because I was in a disassociated state that entire time. Pretty much for 15 years, from 15 through to about, 30. But we'll get to that in a second, yeah? So moved out of home and I just remember like being like, cool, I've got freedom again. Like, fuck my parents, you know what I mean? Like, hate the world, like that real victim mentality, everyone's out to get me, right? And I'm like thinking about it now, like all they ever wanted was the best for me and they actually gave me the best. Like, I feel almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a fraud, right? Because a lot of these guys that I got locked up with, they come from terrible homes, terrible families, got no support. And here I am, like, I guess you could say silver spoon fed to some degree, but I went that wrong way anyway. I went that other way anyway, you know?
Do you think that abandonment situation you found yourself in at 8 years old, do you think that was lingering and that was a byproduct of you getting onto alcohol at 13? Because you had this high of the alcohol, of the pot and everything else, what you were doing. You were trying to mask that feeling of you felt when you were in that room, for that whole day locked up.
I think there's a couple of things here to unpack, right? Because that's definitely a part of it, right? The abandonment issues.
Yeah.
Because then at 13, I can remember the vivid conversation that I had with my mum when she told me that her and my dad were getting divorced, right? We're standing out next to the pool area and she had me and my sister. She was facing the pool, we were facing her. Like, I vividly remember it, right? And she said, your dad and I are getting a divorce. And I said, what's happening? And she goes, well, I tried to sleep with him last night. They've been sleeping in separate beds. And at that time, like, obviously, if now knowing what I know now, it's like if you saw parents sleeping in separate beds, there's something going on there.
Big time.
Right? It's just like, no, well, he said that, he wanted to sleep downstairs because there was aircon there. You know what I mean? So anyways, and we're having this conversation, and my sister said, like, literally breaking down in tears, like tears streaming down her face, man. And she looked at Mum, like, and barely could get the words out, saying, "Why would he do that to us?" And the first thing that came out of my mouth without a conscious thought was, because he doesn't love us anymore. And so the abandonment feeling, like that feeling of he's left us, came up from there. And then from that very point in time, I had to carry the weight of the family. I had to be the man of the house. And I pushed, from that very point in time, 13 years old, I pushed every single bit of emotion I had down, suppressed, pushed it to the side, because I had to be the man of the house for my mum, who was very chaotic, very volatile, very broken woman. Lovely, lovely lady, but very, very broken, you know. And that was a big burden for me to carry. And so the alcohol became the coping mechanism, because it was like, now I can feel okay, right? And not only that, it's like going back to where I was when I was younger, saying that I never really felt like I fit in. Drinking, taking drugs. What do you attract?
Same crowd.
Other people that are drinking, taking drugs, and all of a sudden, I could drink the most piss and be the man. I could snort the most bag and be the man, right? I could punch the most cones and be the fucking man. The more
Do the biggest cone as well. This huge Christmas tree hanging off the CP.
Yeah. Like, did you see Benny pump that cone the other day? He was so cooked.
Yeah.
And it's like that validation, like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And that became my high, was being the guy that got the most fucked up, you know, snorting the most bag, selling the most drugs, stealing the most shit, having the coolest car, whatever it might have been, right? And so, like, here I am at 18 with all this history for the last 5 years of drinking, taking drugs and everything like that, and I'm back out in the street. And so I'm just like, well, fuck, I'm just going to do what makes me feel good. So I was drinking every day, started experimenting with heavier drugs like MDMA, acid, and the one thing that really changed my life forever, ice, you know, otherwise known as crystal meth. And I still, once again, I still remember the conversation I had with the guy that gave it to me for the first time, vividly.
How old were you, 18?
18.
Had your first pipe?
Yeah. My first pipe. I'd heard about people using it, but I was gone to this guy's house who I got my pot off, and they're all passing the pipe around. I was there with a mate, and he's like, "Bruh, can we have a swing on that?" And I was like, "Whoa." He's like, "Come on, bro, I'll be sick, I promise you." I'm like, "Yeah, sweet, let's go. Say less." And the guy that gave it to me for the first time, he's like, "Man, are you sure you want to try this? Because I promise you your life will never be the same." And I was like, "Whatever." And I can promise every single one of the people listening to this call, to this podcast, my life was never the same from that point forward. It was a million miles an hour, right? The first puff, the first time I tried it, I was completely addicted, and that inner entrepreneur kicked in again. And I was like, how can I get more of this? And so I upgraded my game from weed to ice, and the next 8 years of my life looked like something you'd probably see on an Underbelly TV episode. It was wild. It was a wild ride, man. By 20 years old, I was already 2 years deep in ice addiction. And with that, everything else comes with it, right? Like, you forget about anything else that matters. My whole life revolved around the drug. Every day was picking it up, weighing it up, selling it or smoking it. That was my whole life. Okay, I'd drive from Brisbane to Sunshine Coast. I'd drive from, by the way, I had no license. I lost my license at 16 for driving disqualified and driving unlicensed, right? Lost my learners. And I got my license when I was like 27 years old, so I had like an 11-year loss. And so I'd drive, you know, I'd have drivers. I'd go from Sunshine Coast to, you know, Murwillumbah down to New South Wales, back up to the Gold Coast, back to Brisbane, and just same route over and over and over again, right? And yeah, it was a very, very, very volatile time in my life.
Do you think, what did you predict your life to look like aside from the drugs growing up? When you're growing up, do you think, oh, I want to be, you know, I want to be in the Fire East, I want to go to the military. This deep masculine career, what a lot of us males have growing up. But once we have that first hit of whatever it is, whatever the substance is, our life changes from that point on. Man,
honestly, that's a really good question, and I actually can't answer that. I can't tell you what I wanted to be when I was a kid. I feel like, once again, it's just like, even though I didn't have a traumatic childhood, because of all the things that I guess were traumatic to me, I feel like I almost suppressed that. So I can't even think to you or tell you what I wanted to be when I was a kid, which is really sad. Like, I can't think about the aspirations that I had as a kid. I remember going to work with my dad and fucking hating that. He was a carpet layer, but I still found myself being a carpet layer. At about 13 years old, I was helping him lay carpet at one night, you know, and I obviously do odd jobs for him here and there. But thinking back to my childhood, I have no recollection of who I wanted to be or what aspirations I had. I feel like I was almost in a disassociated state, and I think a big part of that's generally due to having to be in that state because my mum was very, not violent, but she was very chaotic. and very unpredictable, and just her moods would be so up and down. And obviously, as children, we regulate ourselves generally off our mother, right? And if she's unstable, like, what can I do then to be, I guess, less of an issue for her? It was like suppress, stop myself from feeling, which then also takes away the motivation to have aspirations and all that sort of stuff. And I really just, I guess you could explain it as floated through life from like as long as I can remember till about 13, 14. I literally just felt like I floated through life.
Wow. What was your aspirations when you're going through your period of time with drugs and alcohol? Did you sit there and wake up every morning and just be like chasing the money, chasing the drugs, chasing the woman?
Right, I thought I was Pablo Escobar. I'm going to be the biggest and baddest, right? That's exactly my mindset because, okay, let's look at this. I went from being a kid who had what felt like no connection. No one wanted to be around me. This, once again, like the stories I told myself. No one wanted to be around me, which is a complete lie. Like, I think about it now, I had plenty of mates, but I isolated myself, right? Because no one got me. No one understood me. You know, and I went from having no one to then selling drugs and everyone wants to be around you. Everyone wants to be around you because you've got the gear, right? You got the money. You know, you've got the girls as well, because even just when it comes back to smoking weed, like all the girls that wanted to get stoned, they'll come pump cones with you.
Because you're shouting in the session.
Exactly right. Have sex, like, you know, all sorts of stuff, and have like plenty of biddies around, have the lads around, and obviously you're the cool guy now, right? And so I got my validation through that. For me, like drugs for me, like I think about this now. If we boil it back to what it actually was, and this is like this is true and true through everything that I've done with working with men. It's like drugs and alcohol and real issues with drugs and alcohol always come back to a lack of self-worth. And so I found worth through validating myself through the actions I was taking and the drugs I was selling. And so my aspiration was make the fucking most bank, be the fucking man, right? Be the guy that has it all, you know, whatever that looks like. And obviously it's like went the wrong way about it, but I had it all, you know. And at that point in time, I realised I had it all, but I was still miserable, you know. If we fast forward a little bit from like, you know, like I said, 20 trying ice to then like between 20 and 26, which was like 18, and then 20 when I got locked up for the first time at 20 years old. Like from 20 years old to like 26, right? So I spent 4 years in prison during that 6 years, for a total of, I think I got locked up 6 times across that that 6 year span.
Talk to me about that. What was the sort of charges you were being charged with for you to end up in jail for that long?
First time, bro, I was actually touching on that before with the, you know, my whole life revolved around the ice side of things. So I forgot about a court date I had. Didn't rock up the court. The police rocked up to my house. I just moved into a rental with the chick that I was seeing at the time. And, they rocked up to my house for a suspicious activity and failed to appear because we're out stealing tools at night. We're out selling drugs at night. We'd come and go from the house. And I think one of the neighbours must have called the cops. They would have looked up the lease and gone, well, this dude actually has a return to prison warrant, right? Because I was on bail for a couple of things that I'd done when I was younger. And obviously on probation as well. Hadn't gone to probation for a very long time. And so they're like, well, this guy's going back to jail. Not that I'd been to jail previous to that, but when you get probation or parole, it's like you've got jail on tick, if you like. You know, it's like you've just got this sentence hanging over your head. So first time getting locked up was, for a fail to appear in court. I did 4 weeks. 4 weeks, right? And you'd think that going to jail for 4 weeks would be enough for me to pull my head in. But I've been frying myself for so long that I actually don't think it put a dint in anything. Like, I got some food. I got a couple of good nights' sleep. But all I did was learn how to get my drugs cheaper and learn way more creative ways to make money. I went from an environment that created the problem to an environment that incubates the problem and back into an environment where I already had the problem in the first place. And so I got out of jail and I was just like, let's turn it up. You know, and I went from, you know, doing a couple of balls of ice a week to doing a couple of ounces of ice a week to, in the height of my career, selling anywhere up to 6 to 8 kilos of ice a week. So, I mean, some weeks, like, I'd be taking 80 grand, like, profit from the shit I was selling, because I was getting it all on tick. I didn't pay for the fucking drugs. That's how it works with that world, right? You get big bulk quantities. Obviously, don't pay your tick bill, you get your kneecap broke. You know what I mean? Like, it's how it goes. But, like, some weeks I was actually making bank. Like, I remember I had this Audi RS5 that I bought. No license. Yeah, no license. Sorry, it was an Audi S5. Audi S5 that I bought, and it was like I think 40 grand or 38 grand or something. I just paid cash for it after a couple of good days in business. You know, I'd be spending 3 grand a day on the pokies, just slapping the money through it, and it just gave me this, obviously this persona that money was just easy to make. You know, that it doesn't matter. It really ruined my relationship with money. You know, I had no problem getting girls. You know, I had Rolex watch. I had, you know, nice clothes. I was always going down to Pack Fair and buying brand new clothes. And so like that period of getting out from jail for the first time, then to actually getting out of jail the last time, there was 6 years there, and it was literally just wild. It was wild. Like being in jail was literally just a way of networking for me. It was a way to, you know, meet new people, meet other contacts, get clean, get out, feel good for, you know, a few weeks, but then I get straight back into it because there's no rehabilitation in jail. Okay, coming from 13 years old drinking to then obviously had my first job at McDonald's, but I didn't have a resume. I didn't have any fucking jobs I could put on my resume. How do I go get a job? I don't even know how to go into an interview. You know, I haven't even got clothes for an interview. I've got G-Star Raw. Like, I'm not going to rock up to an interview in G-Star Raw with a Gucci bloody scarf on. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, what do I do? So I went straight back to doing what I'd always done, which was selling drugs. You know, because to me, and I think this is growing up with my dad, the way that I saw him was money was the most important thing in the world. Money gives you power. That was my belief. And so I was like, well, I'll just do what makes me the most money the quickest way. So I went straight back to selling drugs. Right? There's no one there to catch you. You get put on parole when you get out of jail, right? You're like, okay, unless you do your full time. You get put on parole, and then you get given a check for like $200 something from Centrelink. It's like they call it a crisis payment. What am I doing with that? I'm going to get as much drugs as I can with that, and then I'm going to sell them again. Yeah, I'm going to get as much as I can on tick, and I'm going to sell it because that's how I get the money. That's all I knew. And so for 6 years, like getting in and out of jail, I just got further and further and further down the rabbit hole.
Do you think once you were in the depths of despair, and when you were, you know, sitting in your cell at 11 p.m. at night, you're staring at this fucking brick wall in front of you and you're saying, why am I here? Was there ever a moment of time during that 6 years of your career as a
criminal,
drug addict,
Yeah.
Drug dealer, did you ever sit back and have a conversation with yourself and saying, what am I doing? Because I know in my experience, when I was going through my addiction pretty heavily with coke when I was overseas and even back here in Australia, when you're 3 days old, 4 days old, you're sitting on the couch, you're sitting in the mirror, and you've got, I don't know, let's say 10 empty bags in front of you, or, you know, 16 empty bags in front of you, and you got no money left. And you're
Sun's
thinking,
coming up for the 4th day in a row.
Yep, you hear the birds chirping, you can see the sun coming through the blinds, and you're sitting around with a bunch of scattered cunts who are still fucking on the same wavelength as you. Did you ever sit down and look around the circle and be like, what the fuck am I doing?
Bro, I had a couple of those moments. I guess back to what you're saying about being in prison, actually having that moment. I remember the last time I got locked up, might have actually been the second last time. I got locked up for about a year and 3 or 4 months, I'll call it a year and a half, right? Just as an average, okay? And I spent about a year of that in the reception wing, which is like the unit where everyone comes into the jail. Anyone that comes off the street comes into there. And I remember seeing the same guys coming in like 3 or 4 times, and I was like, look at these fucking losers. And I had that penny drop moment. I'm like, that's me.
You're the other loser.
I'm that guy. Like, I thought about it. I'm like, whoa, this is not an existence. And so I got out of prison that time and got straight back into it. Got locked up for a driving charge. Got out again, and then I decided to study my personal training course. Did a Cert 3 and 4 in personal training. But at that point in time, I was still smoking ice. Like, I got literally straight out of jail and got straight back on the pipe, and I did what I always knew how to do. So I was like taking the easy option out with business, because it's like, I don't, you know, I can do the PT thing. Like, I'm doing semi-legit, but I was still doing the same shit on the side. And it wasn't until, and like once again, there's a lot of these like sort of light bulb moments, you know, the penny drop moments that sort of happened. And it was like, the way I see it is like God's way of just trying to push me back on the right path, you know. And the second one of those, the big one that really stood out, was my partner at the time finding out she was pregnant, who's now the mother of my son William, and just looking around, like he said, and realising that, because I guess, not to take away from who she is as a mother, but at that time we were both, like, obviously when she got pregnant, we were still smoking meth together. Her whole family is still tied up in that sort of lifestyle, you know. And so I looked around and I was like, man, if I bring a kid into this world, he's going to grow up exactly the same. You know, it was like that. I need to do better for him. And so, like, this is probably the thing I hold the most shame around in my entire life, but I left her. I left her while she was pregnant. I left her for another woman. I take full ownership of the fact that I was a weak man at the time. I couldn't get away from that without actually having something else, because I didn't know how to be alone, right? Since a young man, 8 years old, the abandonment, I needed to have a woman in my life, right? And so anytime I wasn't, I just felt I wasn't good enough. And so to get away from her, started talking to another girl from the gym, and all of a sudden, boom, just made the decision to leave her, right? Here she is, pregnant with my son, and I didn't even have anything to do with my son for the first 6 months of his life. You know, it was really, really, really hard time for me. I was very lost and felt very unworthy. I gave up the ice addiction, but instead turned to like cocaine, alcohol, and womanizing. You know, the girl that I'd gotten with to leave my kid's mum, man, she was toxic as. And so here I am, like, you know, getting away thinking, yeah, mad, like, I got this mad new chick, and then all of a sudden it just went like full backfired on me, you know. And so then once again, here I am all alone, and I'm like, well, what can I go to? I can turn to cocaine, I can turn to alcohol, I can turn to women to make me feel good, you know, because having to sit in that was so uncomfortable. And so fast forward now, that was 26 when I got out the last time, and then fast forward to about 30, like during that time, that 4 years, I was once again drinking every weekend, partying every weekend, sleeping with as many women as I could, because it was like the things that made me feel good now, right, rather than actually have to sit in that space of feeling uncomfortable. And I had this one again, like the last penny drop moment, I guess you could call it, where it was the 2nd of January. We've been bendering since New Year's Eve, right? And I remember waking up, I had no phone because I somehow ended up on a jet ski on a houseboat in the middle of the Broadwater after being at a house party in Coomera. I was flicking bags at the time still, right? So I was still selling drugs. I remember ending up on a jet ski, driving my mate's car home that had a Thundercat a ton of Thundercat, and I remember just looking at, like, in the rear vision mirror. This is like 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago. Anyways, and it was raining. It was like proper like bucketing down, and I'm driving. I absolutely cannot see anything, cannot see a thing. Right, I'm like so blind. I remember just looking in the rear vision mirror and seeing the Thundercat just like doing these ones on the road. We're going around the roundabouts at Hope Island here. It's like almost like gutter to gutter, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Right, still kept sending it. And 2nd of January, waking up with a black eye after punching on with my housemate. I crashed my brand new car, so I got my license at this point. Had a new Navara, still got it now. Crashing that Navara into the front fence of my house, which was a rental, and made an absolute dick of myself at probably the nicest house I'd ever been in, just full of people I never knew. Just being off my head after 2 days being awake, just jumping on their brand new white couches, dirty feet, and just like running absolute muck. I was an animal. And I woke up, looked at myself in the mirror, and I was just like, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing, man? You know, you've got a little boy who's now 4 years old at this point. You've got a little boy, so it would have been 2 years ago. You've got a little boy who's needs a father, you know. You're not present in his life. When he is coming to you every second weekend, you're still recovering from the weekend before. And, you know, you're spending your entire time on your phone trying to chase girls because you feel like a piece of shit. You need to show up for this kid. And I started 75 Hard on the 2nd of January, 2022 it would have been. We're 2024 now, yeah, 2022. And then at the end of 75 Hard, so 75 days later, I had my first fight, boxing. And it just showed me that I was capable of so much. Got my hand held up, got the win. And it was the best feeling, you know. And it just showed me that there was so much more potential for me, you know. That was the big turning point for me, was just that waking up, realising that I was a piece of shit, and then just deciding to do something different, right? And since then, I can count on one hand the amount of times I've drunk and taken drugs. Like, I haven't drank or taken drugs this year at all. That's just not what I want to do. I'm not saying I won't ever drink or take drugs again, but what I'm saying is that I have full control of when I do and don't now. Like, I'll go to a Bucks party and not drink. I'll go to a wedding and not drink. I'll go to a best mate's 30th birthday and not drink. And I'll still have just as good a time. And I'll wake up the next morning and go for a 10K run while everyone else is fucking hanging off the end of the toilet bowl trying to, you know, pull their stuff together.
Or if they're still awake.
If they're still awake, that's right. So, yeah, man, that was the big turning points for me. But, like, during that point in time, like, when I was actually, like, really chaotic with the drugs, like, on the ice, like, there was a lot of stuff that happened. Like, at one point there, I was at war with the bikies. Like, literally every time I went out in public, I was just getting jumped. Like, how do they know where I was? You know what I mean? Like, but, like, every time it was just, like, these little warning signs. I was in 3 car accidents in 1 week. One of them, I had my seatbelt undone. I was asleep in the seat because I was obviously cooked from the ice, a couple of days awake. We ended up like flipping the car like multiple times. I ended up like in the front window and then in the back seat. And when the car came to, like falling like this, I had my arm and my head hanging out the car. And the only scratch I got, I've literally got a carpet burn from the seat, from the fabric of the seat on my left lower back, like where my hip is. Right? Like this sort of stuff was just like a normal thing. I was in multiple high-speed police chases, like had guns pulled on me and put down my throat over 20 grand. I've been shot at. Like there was just like all these little things that were like, what the fuck are you doing, man? This is not for you. This life is not for you. Because I was in such a disassociated state. It wasn't until I found out I was having a kid and that I was going to bring him into that world that I was like, I need to do something about this. But the problem is for a lot of us men, it does take getting to rock bottom for us to want to make a change. Like you've got to be at the lowest of the lows. You've got to have ruined your relationship. You've got to have ruined your business. You've got to have not been present with your kid for their entire life to then go, I need to do something about this. You know, which is really sad.
It's sad, but I think it's also relative, and it's what's needed. You know, it's funny. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm, you know, relating to every single thing you're saying. You know, you're a lot older than me. I'm only 22, right? And
oh, bro, well, let me just give you the props for turning it around 10 years before I did, man. Because I was a fucking slow learner, man.
Thanks,
That's
bro.
all I'm saying, bro.
Yeah, it's...
props to you, bro. I love what you're doing, dude.
Thanks, brother. I really do appreciate it, man. But, you know, it's like, I feel like I've lived your span of journey condensed into about 5 or 6 years. I've never spent a night in jail. I've never had my door knocked down. Have I been off the end of a pipe? Yes. Have I been arrested? Yes. Been, you know, all that sort of stuff. But everything is relative here, what I'm sensing, and I find it also. I think one thing I have been struggling with this week, the past few weeks, is whilst I'm so immersed into the self-development world, and whilst I genuinely do show up and I try and do my best every single day I can. That's the best thing we can do as humans, right?
Yes, sir.
Whilst I'm in this, the land of development and, you know, wanting to grow, it's like all these events I'm attending, all these people I'm listening to, they make you feel, I think the one negative thing about self-development is you always feel like you're so far behind than what you should be.
Not enough. You need to do more.
You need to be doing more, man. And that's been my biggest struggle recently. I've been talking to a few people about it, but, you know, sitting here, it's almost like a moment of realization for me that, you know, I'm doing all right.
Bro, you're 22 years old. A lot of the men that I'm working with are 45, 50, bro, and they've been drinking piss or taking drugs for the last 15, 20 years. And they've completely ruined their lives, bro. Like, you're, if anything, ahead of the curve. Like, where most people end up being at that rock bottom when they're like 30 years old, they've got to completely change their lives with nothing. Like, I feel with where you're at, and obviously I don't know your full story, bro, but I think that everyone that comes into the personal development world feels that to some degree. But if I was where you are now at 22 years old, imagine where I'd be now. So just think about where you're going to be when you're my age, bro, in 10 years' time. Immersing yourself in this like you are, like what you can achieve, and you would have seen this already, what you can achieve in like 6 weeks, let alone 6 months, let alone 6 years, let alone 10 years in this space, by surrounding yourself with the right people and putting yourself in the right places and putting yourself in the right rooms, bro. It's huge. It's crazy.
Yeah, bro. I feel that. But I think that's been like my biggest struggle, and, you know, we've almost lived a very relative life. Mine's just been a bit condensed in time, and I think for a lot of men, we feel like we're not doing enough. We feel like we aren't feeling like we're good enough. Coming back to what you're saying, the reason why we turned to drugs and alcohol at a young age was lack of self-worth.
Exactly right, bro.
The moment I felt like a worthful human being was after I just did a fucking half a gram of line off a warm plate with a room full of 20 other people who were like, yeah, that's fucking sick. You know, I got so much validation from those periods of time, and it's real, and it's real. I think for a lot of men.
Then when you haven't got that, you're a piece of shit. So
You're
what
a
do? You
piece
go
of
and
shit.
do the same thing that
Yeah.
got you that validation, bro. It just becomes that cycle.
It is, and it's a vicious cycle, man. And,
Yeah, bro.
you know, I started breaking into cars at 15, 16 with the boys, going to a party,
Yeah,
you know, pop a couple caps, you're off your head, you're just creeping through cars.
Yeah. And it's hilarious. Like,
It's so much fun.
It's like, this is sick, right? I was having this conversation with a good friend of mine the other day who's a Christian, man, right? And he's like, I was talking about, like, you know, youth crime. He's like, yeah, but how cool was it stealing cars back in the day? Like, yeah, at the time it was fucking sick, but now, like, being adults and actually realizing the consequences and how that affects other people's lives, it's like, holy fuck, man. I can't believe I was doing that to people, you know?
Yeah, it's hard, and I think one of the last time I was ever in a stolen car, it was a brand new Toyota Land Cruiser, and this is many years ago. Probably I would have been about 17, 16 when I was a fucking little rat. It was a brand new Toyota Land Cruiser, and the boot was up. The whole car was just packed, chockers, and I was sort of jumping out, and the driver fucking fanged it. I almost snapped my leg hanging off the back of the tailgate. And you'd think even, like, you know, a moment of that, it's like, what are you doing? But it was like, fuck yeah, like, almost, fuck, you know, it was sick.
Yeah, you almost
so
died.
much fun.
You almost died, but, like, to think about that, it's like, what's that to celebrate?
100%. Like, there's nothing to celebrate in that life. And I think over your course of your journey, coming to where you are now in this space, what's been one of the greatest lessons you have learned?
That you always have everything you need right there within yourself. You don't need anything else from anyone else to be worthy, to be okay, to be enough. You've already got that enoughness. You were born as a baby being enough. And it's only through your experiences in life and what you've decided to take on board through experiences that you've lived that you become not enough. You know, that was the biggest thing for me, is like thinking about all these different times in my life where I was like, well, I'm just, you know, a lot of these stories I made up in my head. You know, that doesn't take away from how real they are at the time. But yeah, the biggest lesson is just realizing that I've got everything I need right here already. You know, there's nothing outside of you that's ever going to make you feel enough. Like I said, I had all the cars, I had the girls, I had the nice jewelry, the nice clothes, I had the abundance of money. Like the abundance of money. But it was still never enough. And it wasn't until I went inwards that anything outwards decided to change. Or started to change.
I think our traumas are just relative to the experiences we've had in our life. And our self-worth is a byproduct of those experiences and how we come out the other side and how we tackle them head on.
Yeah.
If you want to grow, go through.
Grow through.
Grow through.
Grow through,
We
right.
grow through what we go through, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny, I was at Chris Williamson the other night.
How was that, by the way?
Bruh.
I was seeing people's stories, I was just like, I got a bit of FOMO at this point.
Dude, he, like, you know, we all talk about role models and we have people who we look up to, and, you know, Jordan Peterson's great. Joe Rogan's great. You know, all these other people in the world, in the space, they're all awesome. If there was one man I could be like, or I could be, it would be Chris Williamson.
Yeah.
And I think to have that man in front of me standing there talking about everything I've heard on a podcast, but I didn't give a fuck because he was in the flesh.
It's raw, it's here, it's in front of me.
I know, and I was just so locked on, man, and so many golden nuggets. What remind me to keep going.
Yeah, man.
I think as men in the space, we need to have those reminders of how to keep going.
That's it.
Whether it be from someone who we look up to, or even the comparison game. I think for a lot of males and for a lot of people in this world and in this society, we compare ourselves to everyone else around us.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like we compare our day 100 to their day 1000. But I think if you want to play the comparison game, compare yourself to who you were.
Who you were, like let's say yesterday, who you were 10 years ago, who you were 5 years ago, whatever it might have been, who you were when you were swinging off the end of the meth pipe, right? Compare yourself to that now. And that's a really good reminder. It's a really good reminder because even me, like obviously, like the job that I do now, I wouldn't even call it a job. The work that I do now helping men is so empowering and it's like just so fulfilling. But you still have your days where you're just like, who the fuck am I to be helping these men? You know?
The imposter syndrome will kill so many dreams, man.
The imposter syndrome, the limiting beliefs, the self-doubt. You know, the people that say you're never going to be able to do that. I remember, right, as a PT, my ex-partner gave me this, right? This is a couple of exes ago now. And she was a lovely girl, but very, very narrow-minded, you know, very not so switched on with the personal development side of things. And I'm like, I'm going to charge people $150 a week to do 3 sessions as a group session with me in PT. She's like, no one's ever going to pay that. I was like, watch me. and I ended up doing, I think, within the first little while, I had like 3 little groups set up with 3 people in each group, and I was like, look at me now, And by the end of that, it was like $300 a week. But if I had listened to no one's ever going to pay that, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it, right? And we listen. We're so quick to take in what other people believe or what other people put on us because of their own limiting beliefs, because of their own perception of what is, I guess, important to them, right? But imagine if we didn't. Imagine if instead we just stayed in our own lane, focusing on what we had, in front of us. How much more potential would there be?
Like, what the fuck does someone else's life have to do with ours?
Yeah, but we're so quick to compare ourselves to other people, or to take other people's beliefs as our own. Right, and this is where obviously a lot of our limiting beliefs come from. 99% of them don't even come from ourselves, unless you've obviously, like, let's say in business, and you failed, right? You failed in business. Like, that's fair. Okay, you got a limiting belief around, you're not going to be able to do it because you haven't done it in the past. You've got no evidence to draw on. But a lot of the time, our limiting beliefs come from other people's experiences that we've taken on board as our own. It comes from our environment. It comes from fucking massively from our environment. I remember for one point in time there, I was drinking every weekend and partying every weekend, and like this happened a couple of times in my life, right? Like getting off the ice was the loneliest I've ever been in my entire life, because after 8 years of being a meth addict, everyone that I associate with smoked meth. I had to walk away from absolutely everyone that I knew. There was not one person in my life that had been there for the last 8 years, and I chose that. I was lonely as fuck, man. I remember my ex's daughter coming to me and going, oh, me and, I think it was her, my ex's cousin, me and whatever her name is, not going to say names on here. Anyways, whatever her name is, have this joke that, you've got no friends because you left mum. I was like, oh, okay. This is coming from like an 8-year-old or 7-year-old at the time. And I'm like, that really hurt me. But I thought about it and I'm like, you know what, it's 100% because I left her, but I also left the environment, which means I had no people that I could associate or, what's the word I'm looking for? Relate to. Right? And so it's lonely as, because for the last 8 years, it's like, oh yeah, what'd you do last week? Got out of jail. What'd you do? What are you working on at the moment? Nothing. I'm just trying to get clean at this point, you know what I mean? And there's so much shame around that. So I had this point of being so lonely, and then getting off, obviously I found my people partying with drugs and alcohol again, then getting off the piss and obviously getting off the bags. It's like, what do I do now? And I joined a run club, and I was like, there's actually people out here on a Sunday morning that aren't out partying, but because of the environment, I just believe that's what everyone did. And I think this is a huge thing that Australian culture has a problem with. It's like, because so many people just believe that's what we do on the weekend. We drink, we take drugs.
The Australian drink culture
men,
is
right?
huge.
For men, especially, we womanize. We've got to sleep with as many girls as we can, because locker room talk, it's like, man, I slayed on the weekend. I went through 3 girls. And it's like, you're the fucking man. But,
dab me up,
Yeah, like, are you kidding? Like, how'd that leave you feeling, bro? Like, you're still lying there lonely as shit on a Monday morning. Like, how's that work for you? But the environment, so many of our beliefs of what we need to do or how we need to validate ourselves comes from our environment. It's wild.
I think one thing that I have really picked up on lately is projection is a reflection.
Yeah.
No matter, the people who are, surrounded with our friend groups, right? They have such an adverse effect on our daily lives that we don't even understand, that we can't even comprehend it until you start to look from the outside in, right?
Yeah, when you take yourself out of it.
100%. Yeah. And when you're sitting in a room with a fuckload of meth addicts or, cocaine addicts even, and, you could probably attest to this when you're scrolling on Instagram something and you see someone being good, you're like, oh, look at this gay cunt.
Look at this fucking loser.
Look at this loser. Yeah. But that's our reflection of like, oh, we aren't doing enough ourselves.
Oh, man, you should read the comments on a lot of my reels, bro. Like, what are you doing taking away all the fun on the weekend? Because I've got that one there. It's like 3 bags, me holding them up. This is what a weekend actually costs. It's like the I say $5.50, which is really underselling what it actually costs for most people, right? It's like, you got a bag, but who's just doing one? Then you're shouting all the boys at the pub because you think you're the man, because, you're coked up to your eyeballs. And let's not talk about the Uber fares and the Uber Eats and all this and all that, right? The amount of people in the comments just like, okay, well, you're talking about wealth. I had this guy today. You're talking about wealth, and look at you, you're in a rental. It's like, bruh, like, where did I talk about wealth? Like, why are you feeling so upset? And the amount of people are just like, you're a fucking loser. This is a scam. Like, and it's like, why does that trigger them so much to have to go and put that negativity out in the world? Like, how do you actually feel about the fact that I'm calling your shit out and really holding a mirror up to you?
No one likes to be held in a mirror close to their face, right?
Oh, man, this is like the hard thing for so many men. This is why so many men don't do the work. Because it means they've got to drop the ego, take the mask off, and actually show up as they are. And for a lot of men, that's a fucking scary thing to do, right? Because like we were talking about before, you know, like being the guy that takes the most drugs, being the guy that drinks the most piss, it's like you've got this persona of being the man, right? Really, you're just a little boy. Because
you're a little boy seeking validation from other
that's right.
little humans.
That's right. You're a kidult, right? You're just a child walking around in an adult's body. And this is so many of the men that we see in society today, which is why I feel like we're stuck in this phase of weak men. Which I'm going to say it straight up, like, you know, it is, we're surrounded by a lot of weak men. Like,
fucking oath, man.
It's a really hard conversation to have with a lot of people because it's like that, let's talk about like that macho mentality, this toxic masculinity and all that sort of stuff that comes with it. But like the fact of the matter is that yes, there has been a lot of men that you know, our standards have slipped for what we accept from one another. You know, it's a really sad world that we live in at the moment. But I think that's why we're here having this conversation, to obviously do something about that. Because like for so long we get taught that vulnerability is weakness. Being a little boy, right? Dad sees you crying. It's like, what are you doing? Don't be a little bitch. Obviously he didn't say those sort of words. Like that's probably something I'd say as a dad, but my dad wasn't like that. He was a stiff. He'd be like, what are you doing crying? Go on, get on with it, you know what I mean? And like kids don't know how to regulate their emotions. That's their way of regulating their emotions. Let them cry, let them have it. But then from a very young age we get taught to suppress. You know, like I said, 13 years old, I got taught to suppress all my emotions because it wasn't safe for me to be upset. It wasn't safe for me to be angry, you know? And this is where this toxic masculinity comes from, because angry men. So why are men angry? It's because they haven't got a way to harness that anger in a positive way. Anger is such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing. If used correctly. If used correctly, right? Bashing your missus isn't a way to use that correctly, but going out and swinging a golf club and hitting a ball, or goating on the bag and not the bag, you know, getting on the bag and having a hit, right? Like chucking some gloves on. I think that all men should do some kind of combat sport. Because it's a way to, number one, focus discipline. It's also a way to stay present, because if you're in the ring with someone, this is the thing I loved about boxing. Like, if you're in the ring with someone, if you're not present, you're going to get smacked in the face. It happened to me plenty of times. You know what I mean? Shit outside the world coming into here, and, like, all of a sudden, I'm like, as soon as I became present, I'm like, okay, cool, got my guard up. I'm getting smacked, but it's not too bad. But it also reminds you you're not made of glass. You know, there's that side of it. But the whole toxic masculinity and, I guess, anger being such a negative thing. Like, we all experience anger, but now it's been portrayed as a negative emotion. You know, anger has been put across as something that if you get angry, it's like you're a bad human. And we get taught that now from a young age, like teaching kids not to get angry. Like, what are they going to do with those emotions? No wonder so many of us go out on the weekend, rip the top off a packet, smack back a couple of beers and run amok, because we've got all this suppressed shit and it all comes out on the weekend, and that's the way that we obviously deal with it. You know, having these sort of conversations, and like with a lot of the men that I work with, it's like, got dudes in there that are, you know, been through therapy after therapist after therapist, and just got nowhere, right? Because they're just like sitting there having conversations. But then you have someone that's relatable that they can actually open up to and go, you know what, this happened to me, and I struggle with that, and all of a sudden it's like bawling their eyes out, but they feel safe to be able to do that because they're in an environment where they're so supported. And all of a sudden it's like this massive weight's been lifted, and they're a completely different human after one fucking session of just having a good cry. Because they've got so much built up emotion that's been suppressed for so long. Because once again, back to how we're taught to be men, you know, don't be vulnerable. It's weakness. You know, even more so than thinking about the environments that I was in, you know, jail, selling drugs. You show vulnerability, you're going to get stabbed, you're going to get shot, you're going to get robbed. There's no chance of being vulnerable, right? And people say that vulnerability is weakness. I think it's actually super, like, it's a really powerful strength that we can have. It's a superpower because it's so easy to suppress. Yeah, it's so easy to suppress, but it actually takes a real man and a lot of courage and authenticity and vulnerability to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah.
You know, it's wild.
I think on the topic of masculinity and stuff, I think the ultimate man is a man who can cry, who can show up for his family, and who can still be kind and portray a positive light for everyone else around him.
What you said there about showing up for his family, right? Because a lot of these men look at being a man as, I'm a manly man, I go to the pub every night, you know, I go to work, I come home, and it's like, where are you actually showing up for your family?
Like, you are not that strong pillar.
You are not a fucking pillar for your family at all. The job of the masculine is to make the feminine and the family feel comfortable, feel safe. You've got to be their security. You've got to be their stability. You've got to be grounded for them. And when you're flying into a packet and you're flying into 10 beers a night and you're up and down because you're hungover or you're struggling with emotional regulation, how's that? How are you creating a safe household for your family? Like, I get it. You provide for them, but are you there for them? Are you actually present with them? Do they actually look at you and go, Dad, I actually love spending time with you? Or are they looking at you going, Dad's always pissed off and angry. I actually don't want to be around him. You know, that was once again, like, you think about, like, looking at trauma. For me, that was a lot of my childhood. Like, Dad wasn't pissed off and angry. It was Mum that was pissed off and angry, but Dad wasn't present. And you wouldn't see that as trauma. But that's obviously what created the abandonment issues, and obviously the lack of being able to be authentically myself. You know? It's
like, what's that quote? If you don't heal from the stuff what made you bled, you're going to bleed on those who don't need to be healed. No, something like that.
You butchered that, bro.
I butchered that so bad.
But I get the gist, bro. Yeah, so if you haven't healed from the things that made you bleed on those around you, something like that.
Yeah, something like that, bro. You butchered that right, lad. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. And I think now, because I'm aware of who I am at my deepest of cores. I'm very aware of the emotions I portray and the emotions I let out. My thought processes, I'm very aware of my thoughts, whether they're positive or negative. I'm really very aware of who I am as a person. I think being in the men's space too, and you could probably attest to this, we can notice a weak man before they even notice it themselves.
Oh, bro, the ego. As soon as you see the ego, it's like, what are you protecting yourself from, bro? We're having a conversation.
Even a spout of anger, out of nowhere.
Yep.
You know, I've even experienced it this week, and I'm not going to go into it too deep, because if someone's listening to this, they might think, oh yeah, you know, I witnessed a practice of deregulated male right in front of me. I'm like, whoa, fuck, man, like you have work to do. And I think to be able to be a masculine man in this modern day society is you have to do the work.
That's the thing though, right?
No one wants to fucking do it.
It's easier just to rip into a packet and suppress. It's uncomfortable to actually, like you said before, sit there with a mirror and actually have to look at yourself, because that means you actually have to identify and acknowledge the fact that you haven't got it all together. And so many of us put on this mask, like, look at me, I'm Ben, I have it all going for me. Like, back in the day when I was selling drugs, right, it's like, look at me, I've got it all going for me. I got no issues at all, you know? I was a fucking broken human, bro. I was a broken human, but you show people that, once again, vulnerability is weakness. And it's like, it makes you think that you're a weaker man. And doing the work, like doing this sort of work, even having these sort of conversations for a lot of us for a lot of men, I should say, is very uncomfortable. And this is one of the conversations I have with every single man when we have our consultation to see if we're going to work together. Okay, well, I can tell you right now, I can promise you this is going to be probably one of the most uncomfortable experiences you're ever going to go through, because everything that you've been using as a coping mechanism is going to be taken away, and you're just going to have to sit in your shit. You got to sit in it, you got to deal with it, and you just got to be one with it. But the thing is, that shadow side of us, we try and almost like hide it or push it away. It's going to be there either way. You've got to embody that. You've got to bring it into you and actually just learn to live with that and acknowledge that that is a part of you, you know? And that's where a lot of the discomfort comes. It's like, oh, not uncomfortable feeling. Let's have a beer. Uncomfortable feeling. It's not a line. I feel lonely. I'm going to go jump on Tinder. Swipe. Now I'm playing the pokies. Distraction. Avoid. You know?
It's like another quote. I'm going to fucking butcher something. I'm going to start it.
I'm here for these, bro. I'm here for these.
No, I'm not even going to start.
Come on, bro. Back yourself.
The one time I have so many quotes downloaded in my brain.
Yeah.
And it's times like this where I sometimes can't show up for them.
Bro, you know the feeling. I used to have all the best jokes. And then like someone started rattling off jokes the other week. I did this 50k run.
Yeah.
And my mate and this chick that we were running with, like a good friend of mine, Carmen, absolute weapon, did like 100k's, ran from Chermside in Brisbane. We jumped in halfway. They're rattling off jokes. And I'm just like, and I'm like going to say one. I'm like, oh wait, what's that joke again? Completely lost it. So I get it, bro. I get it.
Yeah. It's like, no, where is it? Fucking, we can't change the cards we've been dealt. We can only deal how we play them.
We can only choose how we play them.
Yeah.
100%, bro. I think that's so true, right? It's actually, I started reading the Daily Stoic. Have you read that book?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, so it's got like 366 little Stoic quotes. And if there's like anyone that doesn't know what Stoicism is, high level, is not allowing external influences to affect your internal world. So in turn, your external world becomes better because you're obviously not allowing those things to affect you, right? It's like ancient Greek philosophy. And the one today was about exactly that. Like, we can't choose. Like, if you look at life as a play, I'm pretty sure this is Marcus Aurelius, right? You can't choose. Imagine that life's a play, right? And you're just the actor in the play. But you don't get to choose the part that you're playing. You only get to choose how you play it. Right? So you can choose to bitch and moan about the fact that someone crashed into your car, it's like, what can you do about it? What are you going to do differently? You know, we don't get to choose some of the courses that happen throughout life, but we do get to choose every single choice and outcome that we make after that.
It's like it's only up to us to choose the next step we take.
Yeah.
No matter where you take it, we have a conscious decision every single morning on how we're going to fucking spend our days and how we're going to spend our time, whether it's positive or negative. We have something to do, and as a man, we have responsibilities that we need to uphold, and we have people that we need to provide for. But men aren't doing it.
That's exactly right, bro.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why men are killing themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's horrible to say.
That, and obviously not being able to actually talk about these things.
100% because of that constant stigma. You know,
Yeah.
I was...
The pressure, right? The pressure.
It is, bro. It is. When I was in the... before I quit my job, about a week and a half ago...
By the way, congrats, bro.
Fuck that shit, brother.
That is sick.
Dude, so stoked I could say that.
So proud of you, man. That's
Thanks,
really
bro.
cool. It's a big flex, by the way.
Yeah, so cool, hey.
Fucking big flex, bro.
When I was on the tools, I was doing FIFO probably about 3 months ago.
Yep.
Had an older foreman, I guess you could say, carpenter, you know, 60, in his 60s, from that old generation. I was having a shit day. And I didn't want to... I forced myself to get into work, as we do. I've come off camp. And, you know, I said to him, I was like, fucking... I'm not going to drop names, but I said, you know, mate, I'm feeling pretty shit today. And he goes, why, you crook? I'm like, nah, man, I'm like mentally, like, you know, I'm away from my family, I'm away from everything I know.
I'm struggling.
Like, I'm struggling today. And you know what he said to me?
What?
Don't fucking start with that shit, mate. Go and get your fucking tool belt on. And I was just like,
Wow, bro.
it rattled me a bit, you know?
That's crazy, right? Because I haven't been in that culture of like tradie culture, but that's a normal thing, right?
It's normal.
Don't bitch and moan about it.
Don't bitch and moan.
Just pick your shit up and get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the old mentality, right?
It is. And I sort of stood there and I was like, what? And, you know, it's like that goes back everything I've ever tried to change and switch and curve in this life. And having another man stand in front of me directly and say, fucking shut up, get on with it. It's like, what can't, like...
Probably like a big slap to the face, bro.
It was. It's like my feelings, my emotions mean shit to him. And it's like, I had two ways to go about it. I could either sat there and be like, fuck you, you fucking dog, like, or I could have been like, don't take it personally, water for ducks back. Because projection is reflection.
It's like hearing that, it's just like, makes me really sad for him.
Yeah, exactly right. It's
there's no awareness there.
Yeah.
You know,
like
it's like, what's going on in your life, bro?
Yeah.
You know, that you haven't got the time to stop and actually go, you know what, bro? I hear you.
100%.
It's wild, hey?
It's fucked, and I've had a few interactions like that on the job site.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever had a bit of a yarn like that, or if I'm in the pub as an apprentice. You know? And like that culture it's stuck. And especially in the trades, you know, a lot of men who commit suicide are on the tools.
Yeah, man. A lot of, especially in like the fly in, fly out.
Especially in the miners, man.
Yeah, man.
You know, and I think as a man who tries his best every single day to have an interaction like that, it's like we need to be doing more.
Yeah.
You know, and it's doing well. Don't get me wrong. The conversation is out there, but it's not being talked about enough.
I guess that's why we're here having this conversation.
Exactly right, brother.
There's no such thing as too many people talking about it. This is how we create changes, by having as many platforms as we can, as many people as we can, having these kind of conversations, because there's only three numbers that this is going to happen, right? It's that ripple effect. Like, one person listens to this podcast and he shows his mate and his mate shows his mate, and then it's like, well, this is actually the new norm.
100%. And I think it will become normal one day, but fuck, we've got a long way to go. Tell you what, bro, I'm not going to fucking stop until that happens. I think my mission in life is to make those statistics zero.
Yeah.
But that's never going to happen.
Not with that attitude.
Well, it will happen. Sorry, I take that back. No. I take that back.
Come on, brother.
It will happen, and I will not stop until it happens.
Yeah.
What's been your biggest change you've noticed in your own mental health since you've stepped away from that past life and when you have reborn yourself?
I'll call it Ben 2.0. This is what I take all my clients through, right? It's like, what do you need to do to become Adam 2.0, to become Tom 2.0, right? Just think about the best version of you, right? And it's just like they get really excited about it because it's like I get to reinvent myself, you know, because obviously the guys that are coming to me fucking hate themselves. But the biggest, can you ask the question again? Biggest realization?
The biggest realization you've had in your own mental health since stepping away from that life?
That the problems don't go away. Okay, the problems don't go away. You got to face them. It doesn't matter how many drugs you take. It doesn't matter how many girls you sleep with. It doesn't matter how much you gamble or anything like that. The problems that you have are never going away unless you face them head on. The fears, the things that come up for you, they're not going nowhere. You've got to run at them head first and actually do something about them and be a fucking man. Simple as that. Show up for yourself.
A problem resisted is a problem extended.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. He pulled that one out well. But straight up, bro, like, I think about how long I tried to run from problems for, breaking up with a partner of mine because I cheated on her, right? Like, she broke up with me, left me, and I was just like, well, straight back on Tinder, let's go. Avoid the problem, avoid, distract. And what happens is I just felt emptier and emptier and emptier because I was just abandoning myself every time I was taking drugs. It was like, there's a problem here that needs to be worked on, bro. Do something about it. But I kept abandoning myself with drugs, alcohol, women, people-pleasing tendencies, keeping everyone else happy. But then when I took a step away from it all, and especially with that, like stopping the drug selling, stopping the partying every weekend, it's like once again all these people just scurried like cockroaches, and realizing that it's just me. I've got to have me because no one else got me. I've got to have my own back for the sake of my son, for the sake of myself, for the sake of now the men that I'm obviously helping. But no one else was coming to save me. And as far as it goes, like the more that I avoided the problem, the bigger the problem got.
Yeah, fucking mic drop.
Straight up, bro.
Mic drop, bro. What's been the biggest ripple effect you've noticed from your crowd?
Bro, I love this question. Absolutely love this question. And it's funny, like, this is a conversation I have with almost every single one of the men that I work with, because I'm like, boys, men, by you making this change, you have no idea the potential of the change you're going to create in your world. Not in the world, but yes, the world, but in your world, right? And so through me doing, I guess, like 75 hard, like even just 75 hard itself, like 3 or 4 mates wanted to do it as well and get off the piss, right? Because it showed them that it was possible. Because Ben, the biggest sesh gremlin, Ben, the biggest, drug addict there was, could do it. If he can do it, so can I. It gives people hope. And so, like, just by me starting to share my story online of overcoming addiction and that sort of stuff, the ripple effect was that other people saw hope. And now with what I do, like I've helped over 100 men in the last 12 months to overcome self-sabotage, whether it be drugs, alcohol, womanizing, gambling, or even just the self-worth issues they have within themselves. Their health improves, their wealth improves, their personal life and their professional life, as well as their relationships, have all improved. And it's the thing, like this, like community that I've built with men, it's like there's 42 men in there now. And out of that 42 men, those 42 men probably know 40 or 50 men that, or women, even in children, that they have with themselves that are now getting a better experience in life and now starting to see that there's possibilities and change. And so, like, just by, like, helping myself, I started to notice that other people around me wanted to do the same thing because it gave them hope. And so that ripple effect just, it's endless. It's endless. You never know, like, even just for you putting your content up, like you probably put a couple of reels up and never got really any feedback, and that might have been a bit disheartening at first. But the amount of people that probably watch that never reach out because they haven't got the courage to, that watched it and then go, that fucking changed my life. Like I've had people reach out going, dude, like I've been watching your content for the last 2 years and watching it get better and better and better, and everything you say has resonated with me and it really, really helps. I just want you to know that. After 2 years, But like, I feel like we're always looking for that validation. And like the ripple effect, like doesn't need validation. It takes place without us even knowing it. It's just taking place. You know what I mean? The ripple effect of this podcast, right? Will probably hit someone and be like, they'll reach out to you and be like, fuck that talk changed my life. Like now I actually know that I can get off the ice or whatever it might be, right? And so I think that question is like, it's not really something you can answer because I noticed that the ripple effect is that it's affected so many people around me personally. It's affected so many people from the men that I've helped. But the effect of that, actually how many people have been impacted by the changes that you make within your own life, it's unfathomable.
Yeah, I relate, bro. In terms of content, like some videos land, some videos don't. It's like I'm not going to stop myself from I'm not going to pull back from posting a video because I feel like I don't like it. The fact is that whether or not someone reaches out to me afterwards, the fact is that I know it's going to help somebody.
If you're looking for the reach out, it's like you're actually doing it for the wrong reason, because that once again comes back to the validation.
It does, bro.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And so it's like you got to then check yourself. And I've had multiple moments of that where I've had to actually be like, oh man, I'm coming at this the wrong way. You know, just put it up.
100%. I think a lot of us, we have a lot of imposter syndrome with the content. It's like, I like this podcast, I held off from doing it for years. There's a few reasons why. The first reason why, I was still a fucking drug addict. I was thinking about it.
I want to do a podcast. It'd be cool to do one about getting off drugs while I'm on drugs.
Dude, you want to know a fucking story?
Yeah, bro, give it to me.
So when I was in Canada, that was the peak of my addiction when I was in Canada, because, you know, $80
Drugs are cheap.
$80
Drugs are so cheap.
$80 a bag. You have one line, you're like, holy fuck, it's just so good. And, you know, there was a time where, you know, I'd go on benders and I'd snort fucking 16 bags, you know, over a course of 3-4 days, like not a blink of sleep anyway. I think I was on day 2, and I was sitting down with, at the time, who I pitched this idea to one of my mates.
The dinner plate talks?
Yeah, dinner plate talks.
It's like the dreams that never go anywhere, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I pitched it to him, and he was like, I was like, I had this idea, bro, rah, rah. And then, you know, a few days go by, and then him and I sitting down planning the first episode on my laptop. We got some bloody beats going in the background, you know, it's a nice sunny day, and it's like a Friday afternoon, like we don't have work for a few days, and we're sitting down doing this thing, and then he cracks open a beer, and then I crack open a beer, and then get a few sips in, and then the diddle lives next door, and I'm like, bro, should we get a bag? And like, I'm literally typing out a script for a first episode, and now I look back and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, dude,
talk about being out of authenticity, right?
Take a look at the mirror, you know. And that was another reason why I didn't allow myself to start the podcast, because I would have been an absolute fucking fraud.
Yeah.
And I would have been this whole contradictive human walking in the fucking planet, calling himself a mental health podcaster, but then he's snorting bloody 16 grams over the course of 3 days and sleep.
Have you ever had that sort of like a moment of like you're doing something but you just know you're a fraud in doing it?
Yeah.
Tell me about the experience. Like, what was one that comes up for you right now when we speak about that?
When we speak about that right now, so I started this podcast in December last year, November last year. At the time, I was clean. I was clean and sober. This year, my birthday, I got injured from training, so I couldn't train, and I lost my identity. I didn't know who I was because I couldn't train. It's like, who is Lockie Welch if you can't be a triathlete, you know?
Yeah, you're obviously identifying with things outside of yourself there.
100%, and like, I put so much my identity into triathlon, and once I couldn't train, I was like, who am I? I lost myself. And it was coming up around the time of my birthday. I'm like, you know, I have been clean for so long, I just have a big bender, Anyway, I go back down to Brisbane where I grew up.
You grew up in Brizzy?
Yeah, Redlands, Cleveland area.
I got I was on the run from Birkdale.
Yeah, I know a few boys from Acrobat, brother. Don't worry. And, you know, I had lost myself so deep that I allowed myself to go back to the hole that I grew so much from.
Yep. And
boom, relapsed. On the packet, spent all my savings on the packet, an 8-ball weekend, and I was still posting content. I still was doing a little bit of podcasting here and there. And then there was this one time I posted a podcast, and in that podcast I had just been expressing how I'm, you know, 5.5 months clean, sober, and then that weekend I'm on the packet, and then that Friday afternoon I uploaded a podcast, and I was just expressing that now I'm doing the complete opposite. It's like, you are a fraud, Lockie. What are you doing, you fucking idiot? And that was a big thing for me, bro. That was a big thing in my journey for me.
Was that like a big sort of like a pivotal moment for you, actually sitting in that and going...
It was pivotal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, it hit me hard. It hit me hard, and I was talking to a few people about it, and I was losing friends. I was losing family because I was expressing to them about this, and that they could see it from the outside. Like my closest mates, they knew what I was up to, bro. They were starting to distance themselves. Like,
how long did you relapse for?
It was about a solid month.
Yeah, solid.
A solid month and a half. And I couldn't put up anymore. So I think I had about a 3-month break. It was almost like rehab, I guess you could say, where I just intentionally checked in with myself.
Yeah.
And I haven't fucking touched coke for a long time, bro. And that's fucking really awesome to say.
Yeah, that's
you know,
cool, man.
and I think as a recovering addict, I definitely do have those moments of, I could tuck in, you know.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a warm day.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a beer. Let's get a
100%.
Yeah.
Like literally. And, you know, I think a lot of my time when I was having these moments in, you know, wanting to relapse, it's always been after an interaction with someone from that old life.
Yeah, or
you know,
something will come up for you, right? It's like some kind of...
Exactly right. Like when we reminisce on a memory, when we reminisce that time in Canada when I, you know, I was riding bikes around the mountains, going lake hopping, and I was bloody, you know, snorting along the way, having a great time.
Yeah.
You know? Those moments are what brings back the triggers. But I think now, because I'm in this space and the content that I do now, it's not just to have an impact on the other people. It's to keep myself accountable.
Yeah.
And I probably couldn't live with myself if I went back to the packet period. I could not live with myself being, you know, I'm posting all this content, I'm doing all this work in the space, I'm, you know, trying to engage in conversations like this, and I'm trying to talk to people about my experiences with addiction. But if I allow myself to go back there to have a bump, my whole work is in the bin.
But I think that's a really cool thing to touch on, is the fact that even though like you're in this space and you're doing this work, it doesn't mean you don't have the temptation. It doesn't mean you don't struggle with it now.
100%.
Because a lot of people think that, like, as a coach, like for myself, it's like you're this fucking guy that just does all the health things, and like I still have those fucking temptations, man. I still have the times where it's like, it'd be cool to. It's a lot more few and far between now, whereas it used to be a dime a dozen. But it's one of those things. We're a human being, you know, and it could be the slightest little thing. Like I had this happen just recently where. This week I was working on this event that we're working on at the moment, this massive charity event we're putting on in February next year, which is going to be wild, by the way. And a couple of things just didn't line up, and there was like a chance of just having to maybe can the whole thing. And the first thing I thought was like, fuck, I'm going to go to the piss. I'm literally going to call my ex just because I needed a bit of comfort. You know, leaning back into those old patterns of behaviour, because once again the discomfort came up. The next day, I had one phone call, and I was like, okay, problem solved. You know? But we're so quick to jump back into the thing that makes us feel good right now, as opposed to long-term, actually, you know, validation or long-term gratification.
100%. And I posted a reel the other night of a clip, and I was been talking about my experiences, and I even put in the caption, like, you know, social media paints such a different picture in all of our worlds.
Yeah.
You know, I don't post about when I try not to post about when I'm sitting in bed on a Saturday night, I'm seeing everyone's stories, and I'm like thinking it's a nice sunny afternoon. I'm like, oh, fuck, give me a line.
Yeah.
You know, it's like...
My nostrils are hungry.
Literally. And, you know, it's like I'm like you said, I'm still a human being who has these temptations, but now I'm just aware of the triggers.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of how I can curve them.
Yeah.
It's like if I'm feeling like the temptation to, you know, get on it with the boys. Call up the boys who I...
Don't get on it with. That's right. Have that barrier to entry. This is something that I'm really big on with the community that I have, right? Like, I have guys all the time that come in and they're like, oh, fucked up. I'm like, cool. Right, lean on us, you know? And then it's like a couple of weeks later, the same thing happens, but they lean on us, they come in and they're like, all right, cool, you know, you're right. Like, having that almost fail-safe, or that guy or that person or that friend that you can call, and it's just like the first thought is get on the bag. And instead, now you make a phone call to someone else and you have a conversation with them instead of calling the dealer. It's like you've given yourself that barrier to entry, right? And generally it's like because we act on those impulses, right? It's that lack of impulse control. But the more that you learn to control that impulse, the better you get at it. It's like a muscle, you know? And so then eventually you don't need to rely on the other people. You have the thought, the feeling come up, and then it's like, I can get through this myself. I don't need the fucking bag. I'm good.
Literally. And I think one thing what holds me back from whenever I do have these temptations in time, what would your tomorrow you want your today you to do?
100%, bro. Tomorrow you's going to thank you.
And, you know, what I'll do the next morning, I wake up, do my training, I'm like, fuck, I'm so glad I didn't use.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine and he used to call it borrowing tomorrow's happiness.
Bruh. And then some.
And some, bro. Yeah, the old cycle, right? It's like party from Friday to Sunday, right? I live for the weekend, you know, and then you're feeling like a bag of dicks till Thursday until you finally feel somewhat good again. Are you actually living? Because if we do the math on that, it's like 106 days of the year you're actually doing anything with. and the other 200 and something, you're just feeling like a bag of shit. That's not living.
No.
Call Barry and tell him that he's not living right now.
Yeah.
Like, there is no chance.
Not at all. When was the last time you had an impulse to use?
And last time I had an impulse to use, when me and my ex broke up only a few months ago. Yeah, and it came up and I was just like, fuck, I could really go a pipe. Like, what? What do you mean? But the thought came up, it's just like, it'd be cool just to rip into that and stay up for a couple of days and fuck as many girls as I could. Yeah, and like the thought was there, but it was just like, it was a fleeting thought. Whereas once upon a time, that would have been something that would be like, okay, maybe I'll do this, you know? The other thing that came up as well through that breakup was like alcohol, using alcohol again just to take the edge off, you know? How good would it be just to numb it out, you know? But yeah, that was the last time the actual impulse came up. The last time I drank or took drugs was New Year's. But that was planned. That was not like an impulse thing. I had a festival on. I went to this festival and I was there and drinking, had a bit of MDMA, and I think I pulled it in at like 12 o'clock. I was like, this doesn't serve me. So I took like half a Xanax and got up at 6 o'clock the next morning and went for because I started 75 hard on the 1st of January again this year. And I went for like an 8K run in the rain. And I was like, why do I have to drink at that festival? Like, I'm going to the snow machine next year. And there's a good chance I probably won't drink. I'm like, next year. Yeah, next year, February, in Japan. There's a good chance I won't drink. Yeah, once again, like I said, I'm not saying I'm never going to drink or take drugs again, but it's like, for
in this
me,
phase of your life.
For me, does it serve me? Does it enhance the experience any more than what it does? Like, not really. Not really, because it might enhance it in the moment, but what about the next day when I want to do something else when I'm in Japan? And I feel like shit. Like, I did a 6-week Europe trip the other year, and I was the sickest, and honestly, I've never felt so bad in my entire life. And I actually didn't get to enjoy the trip because it's just 6 weeks of partying, absolute debauchery, you know. And that was, once again, so 2 years ago. Like I said, I can count the amount of times I've been fucked up in the last 2 years on one hand. I count that trip as one occasion, like one occasion, because the whole thing was just, you know. And that whole year leading up to that, this was the year I actually got off the piers. I'd had 2 fights. I started running. I ran a marathon, and I went to Europe. And I was just like, and just like all that work that I'd done went just like that. Was gone, you know. And all it takes is that one night of losing momentum for business to start to crumble, for relationships to start to crumble, for old patterns to start to kick back in, for self-worth issues to start to come back up, you know. So to me, it's just really not worth it. When you were coming off the drugs and when you were talking to me about you owned up to, you know, being a bit of a man out of alignment of integrity with your ex, and when you know the grass is greener on the other side type situation. By the way, huge congratulations to be able to sit here and show up for yourself in that way and just allow yourself to express the fact that you know you fucked up. Like that takes a lot of balls and a lot of responsibility. So bro, that's fucking awesome, man. Thank you, brother. Even that it's in itself took a long time for me to be able to be comfortable to do. You know? Yeah, so. It's something what a lot of men could never own up to doing. You know, and again, congratulations, brother. Thank you, brother. When you were in that moment, what was the changes you made in your life consciously to be able to come to where you are right now? Oh, man. At the time, it wasn't conscious. But now thinking back to it, it definitely was. But started consistency with the gym. You know, just started to change the habits, because the habits before that was smoking meth. I was smoking meth and drinking and literally going to the pokies. Just rinsing money at the pokies. And it had to be a complete change of identity to some degree, you know, which meant I had to adopt the identity of the fitness guy, you know. As a PT, that's pretty standard. So I started eating really well. I started going to the gym. I started running. I started also looking at like things like meth work, breath work. I was going to say meditation and breath work at the same time. Come out with meth work. That's got to go in. That is, mate. Dude, this is a one take. Everything gets included, brother. That's going to make for a cool reel. Even my butchered quote gets fucking uploaded, brother. Sick, I don't care. See, I appreciate that and I respect that, bro, because that shows vulnerability in itself, man. 100%, man. It's like, I don't care. Yeah. I'm a human. I make mistakes. Fuck yeah, we do, bro. You know? Fuck yeah, we do. Anyways, so meditation, breath work, that was good, eh? That was fucking great. That was good. No, that was a good one, bro. That's unreal. Meditation, breath work, all that sort of stuff. But it was like, I guess the biggest thing I did was started to look at mentors, look at people I could learn from. So the most intentional thing I did was hiring people to help me. So as a PT, I hired, I did a course with a guy called, you good? You good?
Yeah, bro. Sorry, that was fucking hilarious.
I mean, that couldn't have been any more perfect with the context of this whole episode,
literally,
right?
yeah. I'm sorry, bro. I've never laughed this hard in a podcast.
That's good, bro. It's sweet. I'm glad I could be a first for you.
Yeah.
And pop your laugh,
That's
Jerry.
unreal.
But yeah, getting mentors, people that I could obviously leverage. You good? No. Yeah, hang on.
All right, let's go.
We're done.
Yeah. Sniff it.
It's done. No, the whole website's just done at this point.
100%.
We just sent it. Yeah, so but getting people I could work with, mentors, things like that, doing my own breath work, my own meditations. Another big thing for me that really helped, that was a conscious choice, was I heard all about this journaling thing, you know, and people are like, oh, what the fuck's journaling? It's like, you know, Dear Diary, like something a 16-year-old schoolgirl does.
Yeah.
It's actually such a powerful technique that's so simple, right? Because what it does is it allows you to get all these fucking thoughts, which I had so many of. My head was so busy, right? So busy. Allowed me to get all these conscious thoughts out of here, down onto here, which then gave me a third-person perspective to actually be able to see them from a different place, which then allowed me to actually see the thoughts that I had as, rather than being good or bad, it's like just seeing them as they are, right? Putting a solid morning routine in place, because at the time, I was literally as PT, right? Some days I wasn't even rocking up to work because I'd still be sleeping in some girl's bed or partying with the boys from Friday night. Like, I just wouldn't even rock up for clients, you know what I mean? Or I'd get there still pissed. It's like on a Monday, you know? And so just knocking all that on the head and just going like, I need to create a better routine. So that starts with the weekend, right? They say, obviously, you know, win the morning, win the day. Well, you got to win the night before to win the morning. And just like that, you've got to win your weekend to win the week, right? Because all obviously is relative to what's happened a couple of days before, because the choices that you make create the outcome you have in the future, right? So daily routines, like things like just actually putting a routine in place rather than just waking up 15 minutes before I had to be at work, jumping in an Uber because I had no license at the time, smashing down a shake, being tired as, like, I actually made sure that I was going to bed at a certain time, made sure that I was getting up at a certain time, made sure I was having, you know, a meal in the morning before I got to work, made sure that each day was really structured. You know, and I guess was another big thing for me, was actually just having structure. Because in jail I thrived. Okay, you've got no choice but to have structure. You've got routine. You've got things that you have to do every day. You have to get up, make your bed. We're forced to do that in jail before we leave our cell every morning, right? And then every morning you're either having breakfast or you're going and training, right? And just having that routine and that structure. And so I was like, well, if that worked really well for me and I felt really good doing that then, why wouldn't I just do it now? You know, and so
just in a completely different lifestyle.
Yeah, like from here to here. And I just applied the same principle, which was just having routine and structure in my life. And obviously, like the key little things I did were, okay, let's look at this for instance, gym. Okay, if we go back to all the issues I had, because all dysfunctional human behavior comes back to a lack of self-worth. That's a fact. Every dysfunctional human behavior comes back to a lack of self-worth. So the drugs, the alcohol, all that stuff comes back to a lack of self-worth. What can I do right now to make myself feel better? Go to the fucking gym. Just go to the gym, lift some weight. Because even though I don't want to do it necessarily when I first started, now I love it, right? It's like a daily thing. I absolutely thrive on it. When I first started doing it, I hated it. I was like, this is shit. This is hard. So what is this? And I'd avoid doing it, especially avoid doing leg day. Still do. Look at my legs. Have you seen them? Neither have I.
Were you in the fucking army or something, mate, wearing camo?
Yeah, exactly right. And so I started going to the gym and setting goals. Okay, that's another big thing, like setting goals. And it started off just setting goals in the gym. I want to be X weight, and I want to be X percent body fat, and I want to be doing X amount of bench press, right? I want to lift this much weight. And every time I'd achieve one of those little goals, what I noticed is that it was like this little, hey, gold star for Ben, you know? Improved its self-worth because I set out to do something and I achieved it, which then gave me that sense of I'm enough because I know that I can achieve that thing. Going to the gym itself is obviously just something that, well, basic physiology, it releases endorphins into the body, right? It makes you feel good. But even then, just going and showing up to the gym and having discipline on the days when it's like, I don't want to go to the gym today, right? That discipline also built self-worth because what I told myself was, instead of lying in bed, that's not more important than my goals. I told myself that I'm more important and my goals are worth it. Yeah, and so, like, this is, I guess, it's so simplistic but not easy, right? Because it is simple. It's a very simple concept, but it's not easy because it means obviously leaning into the discomfort and doing all the things that you don't necessarily want to do that you know are going to make you feel good later, but not make you feel so good now. Yeah, so like the gym and the routine and the goal setting were probably the biggest things that really intentionally, after I started to see the progress and obviously started to see the positive impact, I just continued to go hard on that. And so like to this day, I train minimum like 5-6 days a week, right? There's not a day that I usually don't train. I'll either run or I'll do some kind of exercise, and I'll have connection. I know that's something important for me, actually having connection with good human beings in the morning, right? Having a bit of time for myself, actually having time to unwind, whether that's, and get ready for the day, whether that's your journaling, whether that's the breath work. And then having goals that I'm working towards with my health, my wealth, my professional life, my personal life, and my relationships, and actually tracking that so that I know I'm making progress, so I know I'm moving forward. Because as men, we're so goal-orientated and we need to be achieving, right? One of our basic human needs as a human being is growth. How do we get growth? Okay, we need to know that we're moving forward, not going backwards. So the easiest way to do that is goal setting.
Yeah, mic drop again, bro. Fucking perfect answer. I think for a lot of us, it's like, do hard shit. And that's one thing that I've
100%.
like, do hard shit, man. If you want to notice growth and notice a change within your own self and within your relationships, your business life, career, whatever it is, professionalism, whatever it is, do hard shit.
Do the things that make you uncomfortable.
Stack up the evidence.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing what I'm proud of is some days it's hard to get out of bed to show up for the community or show up for the podcast or, show up for myself even. Waking up at 4 a.m, I've got a 2-hour cycle before I got to go work. It's like, show up for yourself, stack that evidence, and that is a byproduct of your self-worth.
Exactly right, bro, because you've already done a hard thing to start the day, right?
It's like, eat the frog.
Yeah, bro, so good.
Who the fuck wants to eat a frog?
Yeah, that's right.
But fucking do it anyway.
Yeah, don't avoid the things that are hard. Do the things that are hard, because that's how you build resilience. It makes everything else in life easier.
100%. And I think once you can understand and grasp the concept of do hard shit, and once you commit to yourself to doing hard shit, it is a ripple effect in all of our areas of life.
Exactly right, bro. It doesn't just stay in one area. Same with the discipline, right? If you practice discipline, like simple thing like making the bed every day, it makes it easier to do discipline things in other areas of your life as well. That discipline comes across in every area of your life. Like you said, same with doing the hard shit. Resilience is transferable to every area of your life.
What do you think is lacking most in this world right now?
Good leadership. Straight up, just good leadership, bro. Like, look around the joint. It's chaos, And
There's idiots all the way up to the top, bro.
Yeah.
Even Chris Williamson said it the other night. He's interviewed some of the most successful and most famous people in the world. He said there's idiots all the way up to the top.
Yeah. It's like, once again, what we said a second ago about weak men, right? It's like, and you've heard the saying, it's like, tough men create good times create weak men create tough times create good men. Right, you heard that one? Yeah, so like we're in that stage at the moment of weak men, and it's like we need to step up as men to change that, and it starts with us. So I think the thing that we're missing is, I think we actually spoke about this briefly on that short we did the other week.
Yes, we did.
It was like, we're missing good leaders and good men, right? Good strong men that stand for their values, that are full of integrity, that are authentic. Right, not just trying to fucking blend in with what everyone else wants. Actually living up to their values. They're vulnerable. That's a huge part of it, right? Like actually being able to talk about their emotions. That's a very, very, very masculine trait. A very masculine trait, right?
Underrated trait.
And then the other thing is ownership. Stand up, go, I fucked up. Right? Rather than hiding or blaming other people. That's a huge thing, right? So I think those 4 things is what it takes to be a good leader and to be a good man. I actually teach that in one of my courses. It's called Alpha Leadership. It's like authenticity, vulnerability, integrity, ownership, and accountability. Right, those 5 things there. So I think we're missing a lot of good leadership, which means that there's a lot of men that aren't showing up with those 5 qualities.
Huge. I think we see it in our everyday lives. Even emotional regulation, we're missing that. And alongside that, we're missing good femininity. We are missing the females who praise the men for doing the work, for showing up for themselves. We are missing the females who aren't backing each other, especially in Australia. The tall poppy syndrome is fucking off its head. Every single one of us, not every single one of us.
Yeah, that's a pretty big statement.
Yeah, that's huge, bro. I caught myself then.
It's bigger than hip hop, that one.
Yeah, that's it. For a lot of us in this life, we are missing so much support and encouragement from everyone around us.
Well, I think that's a big thing, right? Is actually acknowledging that we do need not validation, but reassurance, reassurance and encouragement from others, right? And taking the weight of the world off our own shoulders and actually being able to lean on one another. You know, it's like the three stages of dependence, right? So you got dependence, which is like your kids, your infants, right? They need everything done for them. Then you've got independence, which is where like most of us men get stuck, like feeling like we are alone, but we know we can do everything we need to do, but feeling like we have to do it alone. And then interdependence, which is the third stage, right? Which is where we know we can do it, where we're stoic enough to know that we can handle it, but we also aren't afraid to lean on one another and know that by leaning on one another, we're actually stronger. You know, and there's a lot of that missing in the world at the moment.
We are missing pillars left, right, and centre. And a byproduct of strong feminine is strong masculine. I think the yin and yang.
Yeah.
You know, for the most part, as much as the world is lacking, you know, strong men, like I said before, we are lacking a vast majority of women.
But it's also the job of the masculine to make the feminine feel safe, because here's the problem, right? Is because of the weak men. This is my belief. Because of how, like, I guess I'm not gonna say how many weak men, but because of a stage of weak men, females feel like they can't be safe. They feel like they have to step into the role of the masculine. And this is why we see a lot of breakdown in relationships, because the man's being the bitch. So the woman has to become the man.
The woman has to wear the pants.
That's right. Unfortunately, and so if we look at the masculine, feminine, yin and yang, whatever you want to call it, right, dynamic, it is our job as men to make women feel safe, to feel secure, right? That's what we do by the way that we show up, not by people pleasing and doing everything for them. No, it's by the way that we show up within ourselves. Okay, by the image that we portray to them. Okay, it's not by the actions we take; it's by the things that we do to show up the way that we show up, right? And I guess actions is a part of that, like the way that we do take action in our own lives, right? Because then women know that, okay, he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. I can feel safe to just relax now, as opposed to being so coarse and feeling like I have to do everything myself.
100%. And I think now we as men, we as healthy masculine men, we have to do 10x more of a job because of the standard what's been set by past men. The lack of good men in this world have left such a devastating, I guess, reflection of males as a whole.
Yeah, it's almost like changed the perception
Absolutely.
of what a man is. Okay?
100%.
I think that's obviously why we're here having this conversation, is to start to shift the dynamic of what that looks like for men. Absolutely.
And we have so much work to do, because we see all the time females shit on men. Men are trash, men are toxic. Yeah, I even put it up on Instagram last night. There is a vast majority of males who fit that demographic.
It's like saying all cops are pieces of shit.
Dude.
That used to be my belief, right? But once again, it comes down to the focus. It's like if you keep fishing in the piss pond, you're going to get pissed on, bruh.
100%.
So I think there's like a big shift that needs to take place, and rather than labelling men as pieces of shit or women as pieces of shit, it's just people are pieces of shit. But there are good humans out there.
It's like men aren't trash, women aren't crazy.
No.
You know, but if we can come together and really work together, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I see the notion and the title of man being shifted by conversations like this. Pivotal talks, you know, and I think it's coming and it's happening. But I think it needs to be more of, and I think that's what we're doing today. Fucking an excellent job. Now at the end of each episode, I ask 3 questions.
Okay.
First question is, what's the worst bit of advice you've ever heard and received?
About like 30,000 things just popped into my head. In a breakup, let's just go get fucked up. Don't worry about that. You know, get under one to get over one. You know, that's probably the worst piece of advice, is just like sleep with as many women as you can, because you're going to feel better for it. And I think this is like a really good lesson in itself that we can put out to your listeners, especially the ones that are men, is that if you're not taking the time to heal after a relationship, you're going to continue to bring the same issues into the next relationship. Like you said before, right? If you haven't healed the things that made you bleed, you're going to bleed on the next person. So like, that's definitely the worst piece of advice I've ever heard, because I did that for a very long time, and I felt empty. I felt like a shell of a man, you know, and it wasn't fulfilling.
Again, mic drop, bro. What's the best bit of advice you've ever received?
I love that question. Best best piece of advice I've ever received. You don't have to do everything alone.
Mm.
You don't have to do everything alone. Like, it's okay to, once again, it's like finding your people that you can lean on, but yeah, you're not alone. Okay, there are people out there that care about you, that will help you, that will support you. And yeah, it's okay to actually go, you know what, I'm not doing too great. And actually just ask for that support.
I love that. Completely agree. If you were to sit down in front of a man who was to tell you that he feels like his days aren't worth living, what would you tell him to get him out of that rut?
That's a deep question, bro. It's a deep question. If your father was sitting in front of you saying that he was going to kill himself, what would you want to say to him?
So many people love you, including me.
Yeah, that's what I'd say to him though. If you were sitting in front of a man, like if I was sitting in front of a man, obviously because he had a father, if his father was sitting in front of him and having the same conversation, what would he want to say to him? What would he want his father to hear?
That's a very deep answer. That's powerful. I haven't heard that.
Cool.
Thank you for sharing, bro. That's really good. I think that's really going to touch a lot of people who have come here today. No, man, it's been an absolute incredible, almost an hour and 3/4, and I just want to thank you for coming in today, sharing the space. This has been such a real and authentic conversation, just like what we try and do every single day, right?
100%, bro. Thank you so much for having me.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm so glad that I bumped into you on Burley Hill that morning a few weeks ago, right?
I'm there every day, baby.
That's it, brother. And I think a lot of people can take a lot from you, because I've taken a lot from you today.
Thank you, brother. I'm glad you could.
The way you show up in the space is incredible. I just want to give you some praise for that. The way you move, the conversations you start, the community you've built, it's nothing short of absolutely fucking incredible.
Thank you, brother.
And I feel grateful, and I'm very blessed to be able to share a space like this with someone like you, who is making a positive impact in so many different people's lives. And I just want you to take that home with you today.
I'm sitting in that, bro. It's really nice. I'm about to cry. Bro, it's like, beautiful. Thank you.
You are changing the lives of others, and it is a pleasure to be sitting here across from you today. Men, we are struggling every single day.
Yeah, man.
You struggle not every single day, sorry.
Oh, bro, everyone's got battles every day, right?
Absolutely. There is, struggles you have. There are struggles I have. But if we can come together in these spaces and in these moments in time and be able to give that lean on, the shoulder, the arm reach, the hug, the conversation, it's going to change the statistics.
That's all it takes, bro.
That's all it takes, brother. And now for the show notes, I'll have all of your details in the bottom. So if anyone, please go and give Ben some love. His foundation, his charity, what he started is absolutely incredible. With the youth crime around Gold Coast, it's horrible, and I truly believe that he is going to make a further dent in the world and to really impact those around us in every single day life. So brother, thank you again.
Thank you, my bro.
It's been a fucking pleasure.
Appreciate you, bro.
Now to everyone else, thank you so much for coming along for this ride today. Again, this is just a reinforcement of why I do this stuff, why I bring conversations in, because I can guarantee you that one of you guys will be impacted by this today, and even I have as well. Every single day we have a choice to wake up. You either sleep in with your dreams or you go and chase yours. And I hope you go and chase yours today, because you deserve every single fucking ounce of the happiness what comes your way. You deserve every single bit of love you receive. And you deserve the smiles you share and the smiles you receive. So if you got up today, you did the best you could with what you had. So sit in that. Allow yourself to look yourself in the mirror and say, I love me, because you deserve all the love and eternal self-worth that you bring. That's it from me today. Thank you so much for being along for this incredible ride we call life. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.